Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined today by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
I'm well. Thank you.
Brent has a second camera angle over here to my left. If you are listening to this podcast, you may want to go to the YouTube channel and watch it. We are going to do a gear dump. I just returned from a lot of hunts. I did my elk hunt in the early season, first few weeks of September. I did some fall bear. I did a second elk hunt in Montana, which I've been talking about for the past couple weeks. So those have been following the podcast, y'all know about the elk hunts. And then I've done a mule deer hunt with Lampers, Killer Adventure, and we have a few more hunts to go. I've been a little closed mouth on the hunts because we are in the process, and I'll go over this on a future podcast, of we got a citation from the U.S. Forest Service, and I want to dive into that on a later episode. I'm a little pissed off about that, so you're going to hear that in the show. Mm-hmm. The U.S. Forest Service dismissed the charges, but nevertheless, it's had impact on my business and on our ability to record and share content publicly. The law is garbage. I'm just going to say that right now. It's been out there forever. The Congress told the U.S. Forest Service to fix this like in 2012, almost a decade ago. Still haven't done it.
Once in 2009, 2013,
It's a joke. The law is mostly centered on Hollywood-type productions, and this is silly. I go out in the woods with this tripod right here and this little camera. I do not impact the forest the way that that Hollywood does, and you can tell by the application, which says, is this a sex video? Do you have pyrotechnics? How many stuntmen do you have? How many trailers? What's your parking plan? It's lame. And this isn't the first time a lot of outdoor filmmakers have gone through this, so we do not have a lot of film content that we can share publicly at this time. And we're still dealing with that. And you would think that the U.S. Forest Service would be like, hey, public land. And we like the idea that you're hunting there and that you're promoting public lands and positive use and that you're defending public lands, protecting them, that you're a proponent of them. Nope. There's instead, we got citations, fined, told to take our content down, everything. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, the whole thing. We don't have to, but yeah, I'm hot. I'm hot about it. I'm mad.
I couldn't tell.
Anyway, today's podcast is not about that. Today's podcast is about
everyone's favorite thing.
is about gear. I've done this many times. We do a bag dump kind of frequently, and I talk about all the stuff. And you can go back and listen to last year's and the year before. Each year we learn a little bit more, and I try some new stuff. I'm going to try to stick to stuff that you haven't heard before, like my nifty new boot dryer, and talk about some late season things I did this year as far as how I handled the cold. This is going to be mostly late season. You can kind of look at what I'm bringing on this trip, and a lot of it stays the same for a September hunt, minus what you need for cold weather. Here's the thing that sucks about late season hunts, backpacking late season hunts.
Tell me.
The thing that sucks about late season hunts is that there is no way around the fact that it's cold. It's cold, and you just need more supplies, more gear. You just do. And so your pack goes up in weight exponentially because you got to start running rain gear. You got to have warmer boots. You got to have thicker socks and stuff. You got to have more insulating layers.
Which sucks because I basically want to run around naked in the woods.
Yeah, you got to have gloves, and then you need like micro spikes or, you just need more equipment, more cans of fuel because you might be melting snow on the mountain or the water freezes, and it's just that's the way it is. I'll tell you that this late season gear dump that I'm doing right now, I think I'm going to cover pretty much everything I took. I'll just blow through it and stop on the stuff that I think is really that I want to touch on a little deeper. But the pack, I want to say, I'm not sure how heavy.
How much heavier would you guess it is from your September hunts to your late season hunts?
10 pounds.
10 pounds?
Yeah, 7 to 10 pounds heavier.
Jeez.
And when I have an 18-pound camera gear kit, which the U.S. Forest Service is saying I can't leverage, anyway, when you have 18 pounds of camera gear in terms of a long lens, camera body, batteries, spare batteries, because once you get back there, you got to manage your electricity, your consumption.
Jeez, you hauled
your
around
memory
an extra
cards.
18 pounds for 2 months for maybe nothing.
Yeah. So I'm pissed. But anyway, the camera gear has weight to it. It has some significant weight to it, and it causes some problems. If I didn't have camera gear, I wouldn't obsess over other maybe lightweight issues. So, for example, I'm running this Weatherby Backcountry TI titanium rifle. The whole thing is like 6 pounds with the scope and everything. I might run a heavier rifle if I didn't have to carry 18 pounds of camera gear that most guys don't carry. I may decide, I don't need a super lightweight tent. I can go with sil nylon instead of Cuban fiber. You know what I mean? So some of this stuff I'm running, I don't expect you to go and get and buy, because you may not need to shave that much weight. You might feel comfortable. But we're going to talk about what I'm running and the reason I'm running it. And it's going to be a pretty hyper lightweight stuff, with a few exceptions where I just like the luxury item. So let's start with the first luxury item. This is the GSI Microlight bottle. It's a 33 fluid ounce, 1,000 milliliter. It's about the size of an Nalgene. Mm-hmm. This bottle is super lightweight. I mean, for what it is, it's crazy lightweight, because this will keep my liquid hot all day long, or it'll keep it ice cold all day long. And during September, it adds a little weight, because I can carry like a little platypus bladder or something, and it weighs nothing.
Doesn't Nalgene make a collapsible bottle, or is that who makes that collapsible bottle?
Hydropack, which does these. This is our 3-liter Hydropack bottle, this bladder, the Seeker 3-liter. They make a collapsible bottle that's about the same size as this. Mm-hmm. It has the same internal liters and fluid ounces, but it's a little plastic like this, and it weighs 3 ounces.
Yeah, it's nothing.
And it collapses, and you basically have a water bottle. Ryan used that for years, but I converted him to this bastardly evil, heavy stainless steel bottle.
Room temperature water, man.
Yeah, there's something about so here's the case for late season. Here's why this bottle matters. Because everything freezes. Everything freezes. And if you have a bottle that's just sitting there on your hip that you fill with water, by the afternoon it can freeze solid in some of these temperatures we're hunting in. And furthermore, it's cold. So to have like hot liquid in here, like a hot Ignite or something that I'm just sipping on, or some warm electrolytes, man, it's just like, I'm in this bottle and I'm loving it. And then I grab my little pot in the afternoon, and I add a little more water to it, boil it, and fill it up, and I'm drinking hot liquids all day. And I find it, or at least lukewarm, it's nice because it's just so cold. Vice versa, though, if I want a really cold drink, it stays cold. And in the summer, in the early season hunt with Brad, it was hotter than heck. And so to have ice cold, refreshing liquid was so nice. And so I've debated whether it's worth bringing or not. I just think it is. I don't get paid for any of this, like promoting this bottle in any way. But U.S. Forest Service, just so you know. But this bottle is awesome. And so that's the one item here that I really like, the Microlight, GSI Microlight here. But like I said, it is a luxury item. You could run something lighter, but it is surprisingly light and convenient. And then I use it as a foam roller, even though it's not foam, to roll out the calves and the hips and things like that. Or if I get a knot somewhere, it's nice to have a cylinder object that I can kind of roll out on. So I actually really like that. Something I really like this year is this question came up a lot in the last few days, and that is boots. Okay, let's get right into the boot discussion here, because boots are a thing. First of all, I've gone over my boot system already, and if you didn't see that or you've missed it, go and watch our boot podcast. I go over like 8 pairs of or 10 different models of crispy boots in a line, and I've used them all. They're all crispy boots because I love crispy boots, and there's no reason to use a different one. But if you like something else, use it. The concepts are still applicable, though. I'm running the sheep feet inserts. Those things are money, and I do get paid for those, by the way. So if you want to help out the show, go get yourself some custom orthotics at Sheep Feet. I'm so impressed with theirs, orthotic that they made for me. They slip into my boots. You pull out the inserts that are in there that come with your boot. You slide in the sheep feet version, and they really have helped me a lot. Like, it's one of those things where you don't know what you're missing, until you have that. And what I found was I don't have the same amount of cramping or foot sliding inside my boot that I have when I don't have that. I just feel less foot fatigue, and I don't feel much in a crispy boot to begin with, but it definitely adds a little more value to run the sheep feet inserts. And then when I'm side hilling and stuff, that stiff orthotic kind of just helps that boot perform better. And it's kind of funny. You'd think maybe some boot companies might come out with custom orthotics to go with their boot, but they don't. And probably there's some valid reason to it, but definitely. So my next thing is which boot to wear. On the late season, I've been running this crispy Wild Rock, and a lot of people ask me, should I get, for this late season stuff when it's below freezing and there's snow and so on, should I run the insulated Nevada, or should I go for the Wild Rock that has a lot more insulation? My experience is, and I have super sweaty feet. We've talked about this, hyperhidrosis. Is that what it's called? Whatever. And so I have real sweaty feet. That can cause a problem because it doesn't take much for my boots to get soaked. And so a bunch of dudes, when I talked about on the podcast, sent me a bunch of prototype boot warmers, which was really cool. So I think like three, and then some sent to Ryan. They sent some boot warmers that you throw in your boots, and they are little fans and stuff or heaters, and they dry out your boots each night. Because what I found is when I do wear an insulated boot and you hike 2 or 3 miles, you're chasing a deer, or I get an adrenaline rush and my feet just gush sweat, my boots and my socks get soaked. They get soaked. And it's 20 degrees. Okay, so when I'm wearing insulated Nevada and it's 20 degrees and my feet get that wet, the boot doesn't have enough insulation to handle such a wet foot. The Wild Rock, when they get that wet, yes, they're wet and it's uncomfortable because they're wet, but my feet still stay warm because the insulation keeps it warm. The problem is then you go to bed that night and your boot freezes. There's no foot in it to keep it warm.
Lovely.
It freezes both outside on the leather and stuff, but inside it just kind of freezes. And so all this insulation on the inside and the tongue and all around the boot here, all of that stuff soaks up sweat, gets all wet. This foam, all this stuff gets soaked, and then it kind of freezes with all that saturation, and then you got to put that boot on in the morning. When you put an ice cold boot on in the morning, immediately, okay,
your day is ruined.
Your day, like the problem with that is, as soon as you slide your boot into that ice cold boot, your foot into that ice cold boot, your toes immediately go frozen. And then your foot has to try to warm up the boot. It has to compensate with that ice block. And if you do a lot of walking or hiking, you might help. But it's, to me, what I have found is once my feet get that ice cold and my toes are freezing that much, I'm behind. Like, I need to put my foot into a warm boot in the morning. The boot needs to already be warm and not rob my foot of what little heat it already has. Mm-hmm. When I slip my boot into a warm, dry boot that is unthawed, then I'm starting the day right with a supple boot that's not frozen, that feels good. Okay, so how do you do that? You use this nifty boot warmer that is not in production.
Yeah,
but
it's coming out.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
So the gentleman who made this for me has done a bunch of cool stuff. He designs other things too. And there's some other ones out there. Some other dudes came out with some boot warmers. I think this is one of my favorites, though. So I'll pull it out of the bag here, and you can take a look at what we're dealing with. So it's just this little...
It's prototype of a prototype.
It's a prototype. Right? But it's got these right here. It's got these little...
They're little fans.
Computer fans or something like that, right? They say gritty. See that? Mm-hmm. Boom. Gritty. Nice touch. So these little fans, all right, I can put them into the boot like this. Mm-hmm. And then I plug them into a USB charger. You can see how these fans are running. And you just stick them down in the boot like that, right? And they allow air into the boot. So typically what'll happen is you'll have your boots like this. They'll be sweaty and waterlogged internally. And then I'll take the boot and you just take them off and you leave them kind of by the seek outside stove in the teepee. And the outside of your boot gets some warmth, but overall it stays frozen inside and it's really cold.
Yeah, you need
and the further and you need that hot air inside. Furthermore, when the boots are on the ground, they're just not that warm anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you can't get them warm. And you don't want leather right next to a stove or whatever. And I see guys put it like their stove is right here burning like a red hot furnace and they stick their boots right here. That's too direct of a heat and it'll shrink your leather, crack your leather, ruin your boot. So this is what I do. I take my tripod. This is my tripod right here, and I've talked about this before. This piece of gear is legit. There's a lot of tripods on the market. I still haven't found a head I really like, but this is the go-to tripod in my opinion. This is a Gitzo GT0545T, and I honestly feel like it is one of the lightest weight tripods out there with the stability that can handle a giant heavy spotter or in my case camera lens, and I want to be able to pan with it. So I need a heavy duty tripod. I need one to be a certain height. This tripod is money. A lot of guys like Ryan can get away with a even lighter weight tripod because Ryan doesn't have a heavy camera. He has like a lightweight spotter or something. That's all he needs his tripod for.
How heavy is that lens? It's a couple pounds hanging off the front of the camera.
6 pounds. You're talking about, 6-7 pounds of camera up there, and then I want a fluid pan with it. Now, the panning head I have is basically a Benro, or this one's a Leupold. And so it's got a basic fluid head design. There's a bunch of fluid heads out there I'm looking into. That is the lightest fluid head I've found. One of the lightest that can still pan with a heavy piece of kit on top. Can always run a cheaper pan head or a lighter weight than that, but it can't handle the load with a heavy lens on it, like just out there. You need something strong enough. I know Outdoorsman makes one. It's a little heavy on the heavy side, in my opinion. There's a new brand I heard about that I'm going to look into. All my Manfrotto heads are way heavier than this. But anyway, the boots. So I tie a little knot in my boots like this, right there. And then I hang them on my tripod like this, okay? And my tripod is extended toward the peak of the teepee. So the boots the heat in the teepee rises to the top. So my boots are all the way to the top in the canopy of the teepee where the best heat is, and it always stays warm. So the outside of my boots and the inside of my boots are in a nice warm environment, but the heat's pretty indirect. It's not coming straight off the stove. Then all I do is I take my battery or whatever my USB battery tool is, okay? And I basically have my boot warmers, inside the boots, and my battery is plugged in, and I hang that up here too. And plug in my battery into the charger. So this thing's just whizzing along, sucking warm air into the boot. I usually pull the insoles out so they can dry a little bit, the sheep feet. But the fan's just going. The insoles I lay across the tongue. And I let those things air out as we're going to bed, as we're cooking dinner. I have the fan going. It goes for about maybe an hour, 45 minutes. And then when that hour is up, then I go to bed, I turn it off because I don't want to run my charger all night. And by then, I think usually my boots are pretty dry. And it's crazy. I think our buddy said that this charger only uses 1/10 of the electricity of a phone for I don't know how long, hours. So it didn't seem to impact my USB devices at all. Like these fans did. They used very little electricity.
He said they run for a couple of days on
very little power.
He just got tired of doing it.
Okay, so my point is I run those little fans in the boots up in the canopy with the tripod extended. My boots are, in the morning, we start the fire up. I plug the battery back in, and I let it whir a little bit. And by the time we get out in the morning to go hunt, I pull my boots down. They're dry as a bone. They're warm and supple. My feet slide right into a nice warm boot, and I'm ready to rock. And I can re-sweat the day away with those boots, resaturate them all day, and then I can dry them out again each morning. So that's my system for boots because I sweat so much. Now, Ryan Lampers, he doesn't have to deal with that much because his feet just don't sweat like mine. But some people don't. My wife's feet, I don't think they have a drop of sweat. They're like...
They have no sweat glands.
No sweat glands. They're literally like wood, like dry wood. And they never... My feet are soft as a baby's butt. And I hardly get calluses. My feet are tough. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, they're wet.
Mm-hmm. My feet will callus hard, but they're still soft.
Same. That's what I mean. They're soft, and my calluses will go away within a week or two. Same with my hands. They get so much sweat. So even if you sweat mildly, though, when you start running an insulated boot,
you're gonna sweat. Because
let's face it, when you're sitting on a mountain and you're glassing for 2 or 3 hours and not moving, your feet can get cold at that point. So having this heavily insulated boot in this crispy Wild Rock, it's the only way to go. It's the only thing that makes my feet tolerable when you're sitting still. Everything, though, has its pro and con. And the downside is every time I hike, I sweat a lot and my feet get really wet or can get really wet inside. And so I'm tweaking my system all the time. Everybody's unique. That's how I run. Before, it was fine if I was up for 3 days and my feet kept getting sweaty. But when you're up there 10 or 12 days, and there's no way to dry out those boots, there's no Pete's boot warmer or anything else back at camp, dude, it's rough because my boots just continue to get more and more sweaty inside, and it doesn't matter how often I switch socks. Like, I bring more pairs of socks in a late season hunt because as my feet get sweaty, one way I manage keeping my boots somewhat dry is I pull the socks off and switch to a new pair maybe once or twice in the same day. And that way a saturated pair of socks can dry out at night, and then I can wear them again the next day till the afternoon.
How many times
and go to the afternoon.
You do that before washing them, or do you just wash them any chance you can?
When I get to a creek and we fill up and we have running water nearby, I take a pair of these. Here's a pair of the Smart Wool sock liners. I take those liners and I just dip them in the creek and rinse them off. I don't use soap or anything. Probably would be good to bring some soap. Wouldn't take much. But I've been just dipping them in the creek, and I just squeeze them. You can see all the salt and all the sweat just pour out of them. And then once they're like that, I just strap them to the outside of my pack.
Just hike with them.
And hike with them on the outside. And then that night they dry out when we run the stove. The stove is money, folks. If you're backpacking and you don't have a teepee and a stove, that's misery. But that's how I kind of run. And so I'll dip. I usually on this hunt I brought 3 sock liners, 3 outer socks, and then when I had the opportunity, I would rinse off a dirty pair and get them all. And they worked really well, even though I didn't use soap. I just kind of rinsed them all out, let them hang, dry. I mean, they're really good after that. They'll last another few days of saturated sweat before they start to be a problem. But it kind of seems unfair that I have this foot issue. Hopefully, I'm helping all you others out there with foot issues.
What is Ryan wearing during the late season? Because he's not still wearing the Laponias.
No, he's got a couple late season boots. He'd like to get a pair of these Wild Rocks. His feet were cold. They got cold. The thing is it all depends on the weather, though, right? Like I said, I'm erring on the side of more insulation and dealing with sweaty feet than less
if you have
insulation.
A system that deals with sweaty feet, I'd go with the insulation.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've come to the conclusion of. I can go with the insulation and sweat my butt off and dry them out each day, or I can go with a very uninsulated boot and freeze, and my toes lose feeling and it's miserable, but I don't get very sweaty feet.
I can deal with sporadic moments of being hot and sweaty. I can't deal with chronic cold.
Cold feet, I found can damage nerves. I'm not about that anymore. Like I feel like I'm not getting any younger. I'd like to take care of my feet and keep them from losing too much. I need to keep the feeling in my toes. That ain't good. It's like clearly bad for you. So that's the boot warmer, and that's the setup, and that's how I keep my boots dry and warm, how I put on a new pair of warm boots every day. Once I put those boots on during the day and I take off, man, they're just kind of, my feet stay warm for hours. I'm behind the 8 ball right away first thing in the morning when I have to put on a wet, hot, ice cold boot that's been frozen, saturated inside. And the thing about it too is when I've run different boots and I just keep coming back to more insulation on the later hunts. It's better to have too much insulation than not enough, in my opinion. And now that I have the boot warmer system that I'm running, I feel like I can work around the uncomfortable sweatiness. It's kind of like, how when you wear wool and it gets wet, but it still keeps you warm. Like back in the day when I was a kid and all Dad gave us was army fatigue wool.
Giant
and you get soaked and your pants weigh an extra 30 pounds above what they started out at, but you're still warm. That's kind of how my feet feel inside an insulated boot. They're wet and squishy, and I'm annoyed, but my feet are warm. They're still warm. And so I figure that's how I'm going to roll. So that's me. Again, everybody's different, and I'm only sharing what I know. What works for one dude doesn't always work for another. And this whole topic may be irrelevant to you. Okay, so
along the lines with boots.
So these are the Stormcastle Gator by Peaks, and we've been testing prototypes and running these for about a year. And coming back, Lampers and I, and saying, hey, we like this changed, or this hook's not big enough, or we want to see this done. And it's been cool because Peaks has worked with us to design this gator really how we want it designed. And we just notified people about it yesterday that Peaks came out with the product. Ryan and I just posted some videos about it. We're excited to be part of that R&D. So there's video on it. Go to peaksequipment.com and check it out. Use the code GRITTY and you get a discount.
Yep.
You get a percentage off. And a bunch of guys got on there, and some dude was like, how is this different than the OR Outdoor Research, tried and true gator? And I'm like, well, actually, in my opinion, that's one of the best gators out there.
That's the one you've been using.
That's why the gator is like that. Because OR, there's a few other things that they came out with that I like, but some of the things we wanted to see was a little tougher buckle, a little tougher, little different sized and designed hook around the lace, little extras here and there that I think make the if I could take my OR and say, hey guys, do this, and this, you'd end up with this. So I love this new gator. It's legit. We've been beating the hell out of it, Ryan and I, and the thing is there are some garbage gators out there, and I'll just tell you, like, gator you don't want, and it's pretty common knowledge, is the Sitka gator. It's just not very good. It falls apart. I was
at Sportsman's like 3 weeks ago picking up my wife. I was just meandering around the store, and a guy was walking around with a pair of those, and I felt obligated to say something to him. Like,
yeah, they're junk. They're junk, and they are, I think, the most expensive gator on the market. I think Kuyu's Yukon gator is a great gator. I've heard really good things about that. I think they did a good job. I think OR's done a great job, but I think that this Storm Gator by Peaks is going to be a new flat, like, standard product for people. It's legit, and I'm excited. And the thing about Peaks is it's owned by a hunter and hunting guys, and those guys support hunting and conservation. I don't think OR research is against hunting per se.
But they're not pro.
But I don't know that. I mean, they do satisfy a lot of the REI type crowd, I think. But I think they are pro hunting though too. I don't know, but I like the fact that Peaks they're all in on the hunting side, and so check it out. Check it out. Really, what I want to do is we were going to test them in New Zealand Southern Alps because I think those things are like a meat grinder for gators. But we've used them in other type conditions, and I think we've proven them. I'm excited to get them out and continue banging them up, and I'm sure we'll go through different iterations, but this is a solid product. I hope you guys go out and get it. Like I said, use the code GRITTY and you'll save on these. So that's kind of the system between the boot and the gaiters and boot warmer on that lower half. So then what I got over here, let me pull it up, this pile of heavy clothing that you have to bring on hunts in the late season.
There's still water in this Hydro Pack.
Yeah, you don't want to drink that. So late season, I'm running this pair of Sitka Timberline pant, which I've had for 4 or 5 years. I wear every year. Beat the crap out of them. They just keep on going.
That is
I don't know what's going on with my butt, but that's called wearing the same pair of pants for 25 days in a row, year after year. Anyway, this is a Sitka belt. Not my favorite. I actually like the Kuiu belt better than the Sitka belt. But this is the Sitka Timberline pant. I wear that late season. I love that pant. It's a great pant. Ryan wears the Stone Glacier pant. It's too loud. Sorry, Stone Glacier fans. It's too loud. I like Stone Glacier, and I think their pant I'm sure it performs great. I haven't actually used it myself. But that pant drives me nuts when I hunt with Ryan because every move, if it goes quiet outside, a lot of times it's windy, right? A lot of times you got some brush moving. But when it goes quiet and Ryan's like going through some brush and he might as well be wearing a pair of crinkly pants, and it just like they touch it and they just make so much noise. So if Stone could come out with something slightly quieter, that Timberline is better, in my opinion, in terms of it may not be more comfortable, because I haven't tried the other ones on, but it's the noise that those pants make are a deal breaker for me. Now, under other conditions, like if I am going to hunt late season and there's snow and it's the rut and it's rifle, then I'm likely I'd wear the Stone or another pant that might be louder, just like I would wear a rain pant. The Stone might perform better, might take on less water than the Sitka. I'm not sure, but when you're dealing with some quiet days, I don't want to be found in the Stone Glacier pant. So for me, I don't know. It's hard to beat that Timberline pant. I have beat the hell out of that for 4 or 5 years, same pair, and they're still going. They look like it too. They look like they've been through hell. This is my Mountain Ops Merino top. I wore that all season.
You wore that thing for 30 days.
Straight, pretty much, and I didn't wash it. I wanted to see. It still smells pretty decent. I wore it every day. There's something about merino.
This whole pile is a little ripe.
It is. I haven't washed anything. I just dump it in the backpack. Yeah, it took a while. It took 30 days of intense sweating and grind.
Take your word for it.
But this merino top, I'm impressed. I like hoodies. I like the comfort of this. Now, we're moving into a later season, and when I get really sweaty, this feels kind of nice, merino, when it was September, early October. But as it got really cold and I got sweaty, I actually enjoyed wearing this top more. This is a Sitka top. I don't know. It's like the midweight. And I felt like this top right here is foamy. I don't know. It feels like foam a little bit. Like it's got this feel to it. And I think it's just their standard midweight hoodie, midweight. This one's not a hoodie. It's just the crew kind of zip. But you sweat like crazy in this, but it's like foam. And so it doesn't really take on your sweat. it still kind of keeps you warm even though you're wet in a way that the merino doesn't keep you warm. It's almost like it becomes a base layer and you got to have something to wick beyond that.
Yep.
It works great when it's hot or hotter or warmer or mid like I said, about October. Once it drops below freezing, I actually kind of liked this top a little bit better. The other option though is to wear that Mountain Ops merino top with this, which I found myself wearing this a lot, and this is the shacket.
The shacket?
The shacket, that Sitka shacket, which is like the hoodie / shirt jacket.
Oh.
Shacket. Anyway, I really liked it for archery because I don't like where my bow might hit here, and I don't like movement, and it's really quiet. This shacket, and it's got a little hood on it. It's got this like Berber fleece stuff inside. It's pretty quiet, feels pretty good. I actually like it. Now, I have such big biceps, let's just be honest, that it kind of, when I put it on, it was like always.
Did you rip it?
Hurting. I wore it for like a year, and I'm like, it cuts off, it like leaves a stripe around my arm. So I couldn't take it anymore. I cut it about a year ago. And so I just put a notch in it because this stupid foam is like, it's like a rubber band around my arm. It was just not comfortable. So I cut these.
Well, tell Sitka they need to get more jacked people in their
I cut them about a year ago. I was like, I'm going to get rid of this if I have to. Because at the end of the day, you just feel the circulation in the rubber band.
To ache.
And so I cut it, and I love it way more. Now, you still want it to grab a little bit. I just needed it to loosen. So there's these little notches here. And that was money. So Ryan doesn't have to do that. He's got skinny arms. All right. So that shacket, I found myself wearing that a lot with the Mountain Ops Merino. Just to add a little layer. So this is kind of what I'm wearing when I'm hiking. Now, I wanted to try the shacket next to the vest. So this is the insulated vest. And I wanted to kind of compare the vest to the shacket. And they're kind of interchangeable. Mm-hmm. Like either one, they kind of felt about the same. They kind of did about the same. I would say the vest is maybe a little warmer.
I'm the kind of person, my arms don't affect my temperature a whole lot. It's my chest. And
yeah, for sure. Me too. I sweat so much that when I got really sweaty, the vest kept me warmer than the shacket. It breathes more. And so the wind whipped through it. When it's 25 degrees and you're sweaty, you really want something that blocks the wind more.
Yeah.
So I felt like if it got real late season, I really would probably rely on the vest more than the shacket. But, you know, if it's above freezing, I think I like the shacket more. I like a little wind blowing on my chest as it's sweaty. But later, as it gets later, you know, this blocks the wind just a touch more. So I'm able to get super drenched and sweaty as I'm moving, but my core still stays warm. I have no way around it. I sweat. I just sweat. But this keeps you warm even though you're sweaty. And then when I get back to the tent that night, I pull off the vest and then I dry out with the stove. It's just life. So later season, I didn't need to bring both. I did bring both because I wanted to test them. That's why I also brought the heavier weight Sitka top compared to the Mountain Ops Merino top. And again, I think I like the Sitka top a little more for those super like 20, 25 degree temps. And I prefer this top, this vest to the shacket the shacket just breathes more. When it gets really cold, you need something that sort of just blocks the wind a little bit more. It just does. So, but earlier I was loving the shacket and the Mountain Ops top for all the elk hunts, even early October elk. That was the way to go. So
they might want to workshop the word shacket just a little bit.
Okay, so let's get into the parts where it just sucks. Like there's no way around it. When you're going late season, you have to deal with outer shells and insulation layers that you don't have to deal with at other times. You know, so September I didn't really pack any of this stuff.
This is that extra weight we were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I should say I didn't pack the rain gear. So here's a pair of Sitka Stormfront pants. They're, I think, among the best rain pant on the market. Just this, they're heavy, but gosh, these things are just indestructible, tough. They got these. This is where Gore-Tex membranes can kind of right on the knee or the butt, where they can get really saturated, and they can start to leak. That's their weak point. Barklow designed these with this sort of neoprene, or not neoprene, like PVC rubber coating on the knees, which then now you can't fail. And this Gore-Tex membrane, as it gets dirt into the membrane, dirt makes Gore-Tex fail.
Yeah.
Dirt and garbage shoved into the membrane. That's why you want to wash your Gore-Tex and keep it clean, because it stays more waterproof the cleaner it is. But when you're kneeling down a lot, you're shoving dirt in there. That's why this just makes these PVC rubber knees just really help with that. There's no way around it. You kind of have to bring this, and because when you're in deep snow or it starts to storm or rain, you just gotta have an outer layer to keep all your other layers dry. The other thing about this is when it gets really cold, a lot of times what kills is the wind. You know, if you can have a 30-degree night with no wind, and, you know, your newborn calf in your eastern plains, Montana, is going to survive, and you can have a negative 5-degree temp with no wind, and that calf's going to do a lot better than 30 degrees and 70-mile-an-hour winds. Wind is a killer. Wind is brutal. Wind is death. So when you have these outer shells like this, your rain pant and stuff, you're able to put that over as a last resort to block wind. And if you can have insulation and then a wind blocker on top, you're going to live, you know. But it's amazing how much the wind will rob you of the essence of life. So you want to make sure these are a little heavy. You know, Ryan is running the Stone Glacier waterproof pants. They're packable, better for our hunts we were in. This is like, to me, this is more like a Kodiak Island level of rain pant. I don't necessarily need it, and so it's a little heavy. I might like to run the Stone Glacier rain pant. It's a little more packable, lighter weight, and more appropriate probably for some of our, you know, non-Kodiak Island style, like later season hunts. But it's what I have, and, you know, these aren't cheap to buy. But I do kind of want a lighter rain pant for these later mule deer hunts, but I don't have that. So like I said, maybe check out another. I think Sitka has a lighter weight, like they have the Cloudburst, or they have some others like Ben and Anthony have. They have fewer zippers, lighter, no buttons, no neoprene or rubber knees, less pockets. Like they streamed. Sitka has a version they've streamed down so it doesn't weigh as much, and that's really more appropriate for what I need, because this is adding some ounces. So that's the rain bottom. This is the Stormfront top. This is an amazing top as well. This one's in a solid, which I prefer solids over the camo when possible. This is it has a rubber neoprene sleeve, rubber sleeve, and man, this thing it keeps water from wicking up your sleeve and onto your dry clothes underneath when you seal that up. Sitka makes a dang good rain jacket, and this is right there with it. I would be tempted to bring the Stormfront and nothing lighter for my upper body. For my lower body, knowing I have gaiters anyway, I might like to run a lighter rain pant, like I was saying. I freaking love this Stormfront jacket, but like I said, there's the Cloudburst, and then I know that Stone has their version, Kuiu, but anyway, there's no way around it. You got to bring that heavy rain gear on those late season hunts. It's unfortunate because sometimes it may not even come out of your bag. Mm-hmm. Now, last year it got to -5 for a few days in a row, and the wind was whipping. You needed that rain gear just to keep the wind from just slicing and dicing you. So this is my puffy pant. Sitka, this is the Sitka version. Ryan has the Stone version that he wears. I think they're comparable. Don't know. I think the Stone version makes you look kind of like you got stovepipe pants and kind of metrosexual, where the Sitka version I feel like makes you look more manly. The cut's just more manly, but that's just a superficial, issue there. But they both perform really well, and we live and die in these things. So I will never, even in the September hunt, I brought these, and I just bring them, period. I almost never leave my puffy pant at home anymore. They have the zips on the side, so you can put them on right over your boots, and you can zip them on, zip them off. As soon as we stop and the wind's ripping and you're going to glass a knob for a few minutes, these come on. As soon as we start hiking, they come off. It's just on and off all day, just to keep things comfortable, and they're just easy. They do melt pretty easy. So I do have, and that's the case with all this kind of puffy jacket, puffy pant. Sparks from fires get on there. You're trying to dry out your feet maybe on a hot day. You can see I've melted these and burnt them repeatedly. Sucks, but they're just not built. They're just made out of a material that can melt. And this is my puffy jacket, which I don't think Sitka makes anymore. So they have the light, I forget what it's called, the
Kelvin
Light hoodie jacket, and then they had the Kelvin hoodie, which is this, not the light, but the Kelvin. Then they have their treated down, windproof, heavy duty warm jacket, which makes you look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow, man. It's got so much loft that I hate wearing it. It definitely gets the job done, no question. But you got puffy arms and sleeve. I don't like the feel of it. I like jackets with less loft but warmth. So evidently, though, no one bought this jacket. It's just the plain Kelvin hoodie. And so I think they discontinued it. So they have their massive heavy duty, which is thick, and then they have their lightweight, which is too lightweight. Ryan loves the Stone Glacier puffy jacket, and this year he brought two, and he would wear two, one on the outside, one on the inside, if it got really, really cold. Mostly he ran one, but with two he was in the money. I like layers, so it's not a bad idea to run the stone top and then the second stone top, and then you have the right layer for the right activity. I run the vest and because my core stays warm, and then I wear this on the outside, and if it gets really cold, then and windy, I put my rain jacket on the top, and that's kind of my system for pretty cold weather. Now I'm getting ready to go to another later season mule deer hunt, and those temperatures and the wind can be brutal. And on that hunt, I'm going to take the Stay Puft Marshmallow heavy duty, I don't know, $700-800 Sitka, like windproofs down, giant warm jacket. Has a stuff sack, looks like a sleeping bag by the time you get it puffed in there. But it's, there's different puffies out there, but that's the theory behind it. So that's kind of the setup for clothes. I do like, when it comes to socks, I do like a tall sock, a knee-high sock, because I find like when I run a knee-high sock, I can run that sock all the way up to my knee at wool, and I can wear, it's like having a pair of long johns on from the knees down. And then when it gets hot, I just slide them down to my ankles and cool off, and then I slide them back up. The last thing I want to do is put on wear a pair of like long johns. I hate long johns. I hate them with a passion. I don't want stuff around my junk. I don't want stuff in the hip area.
So saggy,
and you get all sweaty, and then you got the outer pant and the inner pant. And dude, when I'm hiking, I want from the waist to the knees, I want airflow. But from the knees down, I don't mind a gaiter and a tall sock that keeps you nice and warm. From the waist up, I got the appropriate layering. So as I hike, I feel like I keep a good temperature range, and so I like to be able to slide that wool sock down from my knee, the thick, heavy wool sock. In fact, I thought about just having some like Jane Fonda 1980s leg warmers, and then you just roll those suckers down. Or it would be nice to have a leg warmer that's just a zipper. You just wrap it around, zip it, and then you can unwrap it and unzip it. And maybe Peaks will build something like that.
Wink, wink, nod, nod.
So that you can just pull your pant up like this, and then put something warm there and slide your pant down, and gives you a little warmth, but still from the knees to the waist, lots of airflow just to deal with warmth and hiking. And then, but the socks work great. Just pulling up a pair, having longer socks that slide up and down works great for me. So gloves, there's no way around gloves. Once you get up there and it's cold, you kind of have to have multiple pairs. I have these merino wool gloves, which just sort of take the edge off in the teepee. They're nice to just kind of have. They give you maximum. They're just merino. They don't weigh too much, and I can use them to stuff camera lens, like different things inside. I don't know. But in general, these didn't come out of my pack that much. But I like to have just a thin pair of merino wools gloves. The go-to money of best gloves of all time that I love and live and die by are these Sitka mittens. I don't know if they're Stormfront or whatever, Sitka mittens, but they have this inner puffy shell that's like made out of some kind of synthetic down type material. And I run these without the outer shell all the time. I glass with these things on. They're incredibly warm. Mittens are the way to go. Gloves suck. Gloves just are, with your fingers separated, they're just too cold. And when you do get a glove, like I have like a $300 pair of gloves from Sitka, when you do get those gloves that give your fingers their own warmth, each finger is wrapped in like 3 inches wide of glove. I'm just like, I can't, it's not helping, You're
not maneuvering anything.
No, and so I have found that these also pull out. And so, again, it goes back to layering too. So I can wear just the inner part,
And they
do
pop
my
on
thing.
and off so easy too.
Yep. And then this is the outer shell that's waterproof, windproof. Okay. And when it's really windy, I can throw this over the puffy part and I add just that much more warmth. Right. And then what I like is, you can pull this little lever and it tightens right there. And now you have it over your jacket. And this glove is worth every penny. Everyone should have it. It's awesome. And I can still run my dials and stuff and do a lot of glassing and knobs with just this setup here. There's a little button here that you just push and it loosens. So I can then just pull this outer shell off if I want and just run this. Like I want more dexterity a little bit for running my optics or whatever. I can do that. And then I can put the outer shell back on, never having to take off the insulating layer of this glove. But when I'm sweating a lot, but it's super windy, I don't want any warmth insulation because it just increases how much I'm sweating, but I need the wind off me. So I often hike with only the shell. So there's no insulation. The wind's hitting it, but I'm sweaty and wet as I'm climbing mountains, but all I'm wearing is my rain jacket and a merino, like a thin base layer. And I'm wearing this shell as well. So all I'm wearing is outer shells, rain pant shell. Everything's an outer shell. And when I sweat like crazy and I hike, as long as I'm moving and the wind is blowing, it can whip on me, but I'm not sweating into any gear because it's a shell. So I'm getting pretty wet underneath, but it's not going anywhere. And I'm keeping the wind off me. And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm hiking these hills going straight up with heavy pack and a blizzard. And I'm really just wearing the rain shell top and bottom and the gloves. And it's like going to the gym. I get out, I get back to the teepee and I pull the rain gear off. I don't have any clothing that's really wet, and the rain gear doesn't soak up water it just sheds it, So I have found that like this shell and this glove is really, that's the way to go. Now, the way not to go. I tested this glove by Sitka, and I don't like it. I didn't like it at all. Here you have your like fleece warmth layer, right? Your glove. You can see that's the inner layer, okay? Or inner liner. And then here's the glove with the outer liner. and you slip this baby on like that. And I like the idea because you can, if your liner gets wet or anything, same kind of concept that I just described. I like the liner system because if it's built in and it gets a little wet, because I have gloves, Sitka gloves that are where it's all insulated and built in and Gore-Tex on the outside. I found that once it gets wet or damp inside, it's really hard to dry out your glove. Where when it has a liner like this, you can pull off that outer shell, and you can also, and dry it out. You can also decide, hey, I only want to wear this inner layer to do a bunch of stuff. In the morning, I'm getting some stuff going. I'm outside packing my bag, and I just have a nice, decent glove. I found myself using this internal insulating glove all the time instead of this merino glove, right? I thought I would use this as a wind blocker and wear it all the time. But without my fingers being able to touch like they do in the other mitten, this shell was miserable. My hands were frozen solid whenever I wore this shell. These gloves, whenever I put this glove on and into this shell, my hands were frozen. My hands were frozen, these gloves. These gloves were crap. And that was in like 45-degree weather. My hands got cold. So this is like to me, this is like a 50-degree glove for warm weather. It might work on the Oregon coast where it's raining a ton and you got some wind and it's relatively warm outside, but you need some waterproofness. It's just it just didn't work, man. It just wasn't suitable for the conditions. And so to me, I like the idea and the concept. I just don't think this felt insulation, since the internal part's warm enough. Now, I have the same glove. I didn't bring it, that I'm going to bring on all my future hunts, which I've always brought in the past until this hunt. And that is just the Sitka insulated Stormfront glove, where it's all built in. It's got Primaloft insulation. It's got an outer shell. To me, this is just like a Gore-Tex glove for really wet weather, but not cold weather. It's just for wet weather, but not cold weather. They were not comfortable at all. Too cold. That was disappointing. I really only put my hands, I really pretty much used the mittens. I'm still back on the mittens. So I hope that was helpful. Going through the gear, the rest of the gear, I don't want to bore you guys with stuff I've already covered. I mean, I think that's kind of novel or newish information, but let me just kind of go real quick through the rest of this. I've been using this spotter for the past year. It's a Leupold spotter, and it's lightweight. And it's really what I was looking for, was something that didn't weigh that much. I love the BX5, but it's like 5 pounds. This thing is 12 power to 40 power, and Ryan found that this was just about right for everything we needed on our hikes in our mountains. It's real crisp. It's got that military style, but man, I'm in love with this thing. It is money. And Brad had a little phone scope adapter for it, and he ran it, Brad Hunt, a bunch on our elk hunts, and I don't want to leave without it anymore. And so this little Leupold spotter is legit for backpacking. It's just legit. I think it's crisp. We compared it to a couple other brands, Ryan and I. I think that the power and the crispness of the lens is just right in this little package. And the phone scope footage we captured on it, because the eyepiece is unique, it's a little different. It was a little easier to use, in fact, and to slide the phone scope adapter on it, and it worked great. We got great footage of bulls and stuff doing their thing with this. So I love this thing, and combine that with my super lightweight Gitzo tripod, and I think this is 2.5 pounds, 2 pounds, something like that.
Light.
You have to check it out, but it's hard to beat because you want a spotter. You really do want to see how big that bull is, or how big that or if there's one bedded next to a group of does, is there a buck with them? And sometimes the only way you're going to see it is just with more power. And this little guy, man, I'm impressed. And a lot of the other spotters are just too heavy. There's just too much weight, and I don't need that much. So this is, you guys should check into this. This Leupold spotter, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with it as a backpacking option. Really impressed. I like how it feels. Ryan whines because it's a straight. Like he likes a bent where he looks down. I can use either one. Okay. But I see Ryan doing this all the time with his neck, and I'm like, I don't like that. And Ryan's like, I'm doing this to look. And I was like, no, you're not. Like we have different anatomy. When Ryan looks through this and he sets it up for me, and then I get behind it, I'm like, how do you, anyway. So, but I love it. I think for the weight and what you get out of it and the crispness and the magnification, it's your backpacking spotter. And it's made in America. All right. So let's see. I do have this goat knife.
Is this magnetic on the bottom?
Yep, there's magnets on that. So there's the goat knives, and then there's this Benchmade knife. And both hang around your neck, and we've used a lot. This is the Altitude, and I think that's the Capri Hunter or whatever. The goat knife is pretty cool by our friend Travis Nowotny, and he has a replacement blade that you can slide that one off and replace it with a different one. We are very impressed with the two. I've always loved the Benchmade Altitude. This knife is legit. You kind of have to have someone professional sharpen it because it holds its edge forever, but it's like harder than diamonds. And then Travis's steel is nice as well. And it's got a little Allen key bit there that you can put on the end, and then you can use it as a wrench if you need to. It's kind of versatile that way. And then you can replace the blade to have different style blades. Again, I like the sheath around my neck situation. Both of them held an edge really well, and I liked the edge. Both of them are filthy. The cool thing about goat knives is that goat knives helps gritty out. The not cool thing about Benchmade is they don't help gritty out. We've always been a fan of Benchmade, but if you go and buy a Benchmade knife, it does nothing for our brand or help us continue to do what we do. Goat knives, though, when you use the code GRITTY, you get a discount, and we get a benefit out of that. But you can't go wrong with either knife. They're very comparable. I'm actually really liking the goat knife a lot. I can't really say that that I would choose the Benchmade over the goat knife. They're that good. Not just because they're partnered with us. If Benchmade ever wants to partner with us, that'd be great, but they never have. So, to their detriment. Anyway, that's Benchmade Altitude and the Capri Hunter from Goat Knives. Both are great. I just like the neck sheath. That's a big deal to me. I didn't think I would until I started running one, and then I'm just like, oh gosh, this is life. For late season hunts, I think you need micro spikes, and these are the Catula micro spikes. Check them out. They're for your boots. We run them all the time. They're money. That's the way to go. I have my kill kit. I have the goat knife replaceable blade set up here with Allen keys that I like. Maybe this is the Capri Hunter. I don't remember, but
yeah, that's the Capri
this
Hunter.
Benchmade doesn't make. They don't have a replaceable blade knife, so I think this is one of the better replaceable blade knives out there. I love all the little details that come with it. And I like the shape and fit in my hand. It's super lightweight. So this is also a goat knife. Don't buy yourself a Piranha or an Outdoor Edge or any of those, because those don't help gritty out. The goat knife helps gritty out, and the goat knife I think is better. So check it out. Graxaw game bags. Use the code GRITTY there. Those are awesome. And, we have a headlamp we're prototyping, but for peaks, and I think it's pretty sweet, but we aren't ready to go and talk about that yet. So we also have we're testing a spoon. So you have your Sea to Summit spoon, which we love, but Sea to Summit isn't a hunting company. But guess what? Peaks is. And titanium spoon. Pretty sweet if we could replace the REI brand with a hunting brand. So looks like we've been messing with that, and I really like it. Probably not supposed to talk about half this stuff. But anyway, here we have a blood clot kit. I think you need some first aid. That's a no-brainer. Earbuds. I have some earbuds that I like to hike with. These are Grizzly ears. I've been using them for a long time. Just when you're out there hiking day after day after day, it's nice to have music. It's nice to be able to listen to a few podcasts or an audio book, especially when you're just glassing for hours and hours and hours, can help the day go by. And I always download 4 or 5 movies on these hunts just in case you get stuck somewhere and you are there for hours in just blizzard and storms or rain and you're like hunkered down. Sure does help to have a couple movies on hand. This year I've only dove into one. I only watched one movie this year so far on all my hunts, which, and it was nice because Lampers and I were stuck somewhere and it was like, hey, you want to watch a movie? Yeah, why not? So the SteriPen is how we filter water primarily, and Ryan has been using the newest SteriPen, which runs on it's a rechargeable battery. It's a USB. Ooh. So it doesn't take, it's way smaller and lighter than this classic SteriPen. And it has a USB plug that plugs into it and charges. And so far, we're kind of finding that our prototype headlamp does the same thing. Being able to have just rechargeable batteries that just charge up is kind of nice. And you spend so much money on batteries, and you don't really have to. You take them fully charged up with you. And then you have your dark energy, for example, Poseidon, like this little charger here, and it's recharging all your batteries for everything. And then you can kind of, it sucks to bring spare batteries, spare AA's, spare AAA's, spare this, spare that. It kind of sucks because you don't know what your usage is going to be. So you're carrying that extra weight that you may or may not use. But battery chargers, you just use them as needed. So when your headlamp is going low, you charge it. But you never charge it if it never got low. Maybe you didn't do a nasty night hike, right? So then you didn't have to. Same with maybe you're not hardly filtering that much water with your SteriPen. Well, you don't need to charge it, but maybe you happen to use your headlamp 3 nights in a row. Well, now you want to charge it. So you don't have to bring all these extra batteries. That is why for a while now, I've been bringing those Pale Blues because those Pale Blues take a USB. And so you're basically...
They're regular batteries, like your Energizer
regular
batteries.
AAA, AA battery that charges. So I've been doing it almost in the same way because I have chargeable AAA, AA batteries. But they broke on me.
Oh, really?
The port on some AA's just broke. And maybe it was when I was plugging it in, but they're rattling like a little baby rattle in there. Now, I've used them for a year, and they were kind of prototype-ish at the time. They probably may have made them a little tougher now. But you can go to REI and Cabela's, and you can start looking at a lot of the headlamps out there from Black Diamond and Petzl, and all of them are moving to the USB rechargeable. And same with SteriPen. So I think I'm going to start running mostly all that rechargeable stuff. So let's talk about the battery, the backup battery power. This Dark Energy Poseidon, I really love. It's impervious to the cold. It holds some power, lasts a while. I really like it. I think I go through one of these every 4 days, 3 or 4 days. Because I like to use a lot of OnX, a lot of power on my phone. I'm using this InReach, which is also this InReach Mini, which syncs to my phone so I can text to my wife all day long. This, again, also is USB powered, so you're going to run it and charge it per needs, depending on how often it's on, and you're going to charge your iPhone. Well, I've often really conserved my electricity when I'm out there, trying not to take, because battery packs can be a little heavy. So I've tried to really turn my phone off, use very little headlamp power, like everything. This time though, I decided, you know what, kind of tired of that. And I have my boot warmer, and I had no idea how much power it was going to use. So I decided to really bring a brick of power with me and see how it did. So I brought this, which is funny because this is it's a Swit Li-ion battery pack. It's the battery pack. It's like a 4 or 5 hour battery pack that goes on my FS5 camera. Okay. It has a little battery meter that shows 100, 75%, 50%, 25%, right? And it's got this little USB port here though. So this battery is really my
Camera
old
battery.
school video camera battery, but also has a USB port and can be a backpacking charger. Well, I'm impressed. This thing sucks. It's heavy.
I was saying, man, you could brain someone.
It's
with
heavy,
that.
but I was able to use this for 12 days
Oh wow!
and charge my phone, my InReach, watch a movie, keep things cranking on this charger and run my boots on it and everything. And it's a penalty. It's a weight penalty. But if you're not bringing 18 pounds of camera gear, you should just bring this and quit. Don't whine. Now, this battery is $400 or $500 if you buy it.
It's what?
If you buy the Sony version, and it doesn't have a USB port. But if you buy this knockoff version, like on Amazon, it's by Swit, SWIT. I think this is the number, the S8U93. I'm actually pretty impressed with this. I think it's $150 or $80 or something, which is kind of on par with the Poseidon. I can't remember. It is 100 something. I'm not sure, but I'd have to bring 3 or 4 of these to one of these.
What would you say the weight difference is?
I don't know. I should weigh them on the scale, folks, for you, but I'm not going to. It's just heavy and heavy. Both are heavy. They suck. But I think I'm just saying I would look if I'm a backcountry hunter, I'd seriously consider bringing more electricity than I used to. But on the upside, I'm getting rid of AA's and AAA backups that I used to run. I'm making my SteriPin half as big. It's a tiny little SteriPin, what Ryan is running, like this tiny little thing. And it takes the USB power. I think in the end, by the time I get rid of all those extra batteries, you can really justify a bigger battery pack. That's it. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it. So I bring a lot of rope and string. I went with a smaller twine this time. I have both, a little thicker one, but I went and got some heavy, strong twine or cord. I should say cordage, 550 type cordage, but it's even thinner, but can hold insane weight. This rope is unreal.
That's the stuff you hang up your meat bags with. And
it's tiny. It's tiny. So I started running it. This is more your 550 cord. You see how thick it is? It just weighs more. It's easier to work with in some ways, but it's crazy how strong some of that tiny lightweight stuff is, compact stuff. So I have a little of both. And I think you can see my other stuff in here. See how it's thicker, heavier, and compared to this. And I'm like, you know what? This little tent stuff
string
is like, it's money. So I've sort of been it's just another way to save a little weight and have way more rope. I found that we run out of rope a lot, and I don't like that. It just seems to be that we need it. Tenacious tape and duct tape. Those are 2 things, and Luco tape. Those 3 tapes are money. Luco tape for the blisters, duct tape for the repairs. Also, tenacious tape for like air mattress holes and things like that. This is my air pad, which is the Thermarest Neo Air. I really want to try the X-Therm. This has a slow leak on it and has for like a year, and I can't find it. It still holds air all night. It's not until morning where it's starting to get a little lower on air.
Time to get up anyways.
Ryan's got a hole in his, but he's run his Big Agnes Q-Core for 3 years, and it's finally got a hole. So his pad was going low on air every night, and I'd hear him blowing it up about 5 a.m. And then, once or twice a night, he had his leak was faster than mine. Kind of annoying. And finding holes in air mattresses isn't good. I still haven't found an air mattress setup that I'm really happy with. But the Q-Core isn't warm enough for me in the past. It's just too but it is more durable, I think. I don't know. Ryan has tried, and I have both tried to compensate, prevent holes in our pads by having thicker Tyvek kind of ground cloths. But that adds weight. It's like, well, why not just have the weight built into the pad and just know the pad won't is just tougher. But that's the pad situation. The Neo Air is tiny and lightweight, and it fits my body. There's no extra to it, and it's insulated, and it's just warmer. And I like horizontal baffles more than vertical. But anyway, that's its own discussion. My ground cloth I've talked about before. I'm running a I'm not even going to pull it out, but I've got for my ground cloth a 6-ounce Cuban fiber tarp that's like 10 by 8 or something, and I doubled that up. And so far, it has done a great job of keeping punctures or anything from getting through to my pad. My holes on my pad are from the top, not the bottom, because I'll have like a sticker in my pant, and then I'll sit down, and there'll be a little like those little burrs. I don't know what they're
Goat
called,
heads.
little devil heads or whatever. And I check my pants, but then you sit down and you roll and you put a little tiny micro hole in it, and then the tenacious tape comes into play. So what I've been trying to do is I don't sit on my sleeping bag or on my pad ever bare anymore. I just lay my sleeping bag out, and I sit on the sleeping bag itself with my pants and stuff, just because the sleeping bag can take that kind of thing, and it does fine. So that's the Stone Glacier Chill Coot 15-degree bag. I used it in freezing cold weather, and Ryan wears his puffy pants with the 15-degree bag, and he wears his puffy jacket. I don't know how he does it. I'd sweat my nuts off in there. I did wear my puffy jacket the last few days when it was really cold on that hunt, below freezing temps. But I could not wear the pants at the bottom. But I did take a couple puffy layers, and I wrapped them around my feet. So like my puffy vest, or I took my puffy pants and I wrapped them around my feet. And then it's just my foot box at the bottom of the bag was wrapped in extra thick. And I found that my sleeping bag was so much more comfortable taking my jacket and putting it around my feet at night. So the only thing that gets cold really in that 15-degree bag for me is my feet. So having that extra thickness was great. And some of that's because the wall of the tent, your bag hits the wall. Overnight, it gets damp, and the bag gets a little damp. And I just think they don't put enough insulation in the footbed, even though they do double up on the insulation down there, and they double up on the top, not on the bottom, because in theory you have a pad under you that's insulated. But at the end of the day, having one of my puffy layers around my feet, slide them to the bottom of the bag, put on a puffy jacket, that was perfect for me. Lampers was different. He wore the actual puffy pant and the jacket as he went to bed.
Some people can just produce their own body heat.
Yeah.
Others cannot.
Well, I don't. I generally am colder than Ryan, but I did have a leaking pad last year, and it was flat a lot of the time. So I'm not sure. But I was too hot with puffy pants on. Too hot. Couldn't do the puffy pant thing. I also sweat a lot from the waist down. I don't like. It's too uncomfortable. I can't. Like I said, I'd be the guy wearing a kilt if I could.
We've done a lot of these on a podcast.
Yeah, I think you can check out more of this. I'm running the Stone Glacier 7900 pack. That's the same. Everything else is kind of the same.
Yeah, the last gear pod, we showed how to pack the pack and stuff. We showed the rifle.
We showed the weight, the total weight.
We weighed everything.
Matches we brought. I have like a plasma lighter, a gas lighter, couple of these little Bic lighters, and then I've also got. You guys need to get trioxane tablets. I don't know if they still where you find them, but the military had excess. I don't know what they do either. I know they use them for MREs and stuff. You just light that thing, but trioxane tablets they'll burn underwater. They're just the best fire starter ever. Ryan had some pyro putty. And that stuff's a pale imitation of trioxane tablets. But there's lots
of pyro putty. You can take lint. I literally took out my pyro putty out of the jar. I put lint and petroleum jelly in there.
Yeah,
and
you can do it with cotton balls and things like that. But trioxane tablets are money. They might cause cancer. I don't know. I don't know what they're even made out of. But they definitely are. They burn. So I'm not going to talk about my camera gear on this. That I've covered that before. My battery and electric usage, I've kind of covered that on another show slightly. But
this is the different stuff for the late season.
Yeah, I'm still running this headlamp from for like 6 or 7 years, and it's the Black Diamond Stormfront. They don't even make this really anymore because it's all USB powered now. But that's been money. I have been bringing this GSI mug with me, and I have not stopped. I freaking love having a mug, a little tiny mug, because it's just handy to keep your water bottle. It's got maybe something in it, but I like this, and I told Ryan because I'm kind of lazy, because I can fill this with water real quick. Like we're just sitting there, and it's like, hey, I just want some Ignite, a little beverage. Boom, I can set that down. I can dump my water from my bladder in there.
You have some. You can do a real test right now.
And I fill that thing up, and then I just take my SteriPin and I just set it right there inside, and voila! I don't have to stir it or do anything, and it just sterilizes it. I don't have to stand there and hold it like I do with this for 2 minutes. It's kind of nice, and I quickly throw it back in there. I take my new spoon and I mix up my drink or whatever. Could be a hot cider or tea or Ignite or something, Yeti. And then, boom, I throw the lid on it and I go. It's just a creature comfort, and it doesn't weigh anything, and it's just nice to have another container. The other thing is this. I can get into the tiniest seep or the littlest creek bed, and I can scoop water. And maybe it's only this much, but I can take that and I can fill this bladder up, or I can fill this bottle up. And when you're trying to fill this up in a seep, you can't. And then you're trying to get a bottle like this in there, you can't get it in there because of the shape. But this little guy, you can just get in there and scoop water, and can be a little lifesaver for.
How much does that thing weigh?
You feel it. It weighs nothing. It's like it's air.
Oh. Yeah, that's worth bringing.
Yeah, it's air. And I keep it in the top lid so I can just get to it whenever. I have had this since, 2004.
Oh, really?
So Ryan has a one from a different brand. This is just GSI. Just go to the store and get one of these little plastic mug jobbers. I also like that you can drink that hot liquid right here, and when you're sitting in your sleeping bag and you're sideways, it's like when you're trying to drink out of this, you're like, don't let it spill to the side. Like, I like having this child sippy cup top where you can just kind of drink it and not when you're laying down or whatever, and you don't have it get messed up. Real quick, let's just go over some of the food, just like a day's food. Okay. Because I think folks might find that real interesting. We'll hammer through it real quick. Here's a bag of food for a day, typically. This is what I'm bringing. I've got a Heather's Choice breakfast. This is just a cinnamon breakfast. Let's shove all this stuff to the side. Cinnamon breakfast. I've got a peanut butter bar, usually 2. I got some cheese. This is Tillamook sharp cheddar. I got a couple honey stinger waffles, which are my new addiction and are probably not good for you. Here's another peanut butter bar. This is the chocolate version. Okay. These are eaten honey stingers because I've tapped into this bag. By the way, the best flavors are the salted caramel and probably, I think, the strawberry. This is dried kale, so I can get some greens and some healthy stuff that my wife has made for me. It's just dried kale. This is some jerky. I already ate some of it. Usually it's all my homemade jerky. These you get at Costco.
This doesn't look like dried kale. It looks like something else, bro.
It is not marijuana.
Are those the mushrooms?
These are mushrooms.
Oh, those things are so good.
They're like chips.
They're mushroom chips.
They're shiitake mushrooms. You get them at Costco, and they are fine dining. You just pop these and eat them like chips. They're crunchy. They're freaking delicious.
And they got
a lot of protein in them and stuff. A lot of natural goodness.
Filling.
These are more cheese, Baby Bells, wax covered cheese. I like those a lot. Here are some this is just some dried fruit. Suzanne got some apple and some cranberries. She's been drying a lot of this stuff. This is Suzanne's little protein balls that she makes. Ryan has a recipe for hemp cookies.
Those look like Rocky Mountain oysters.
They're like 100 calories each. So it's 200 calories for this little bag. These perfect bars that are peanut butter, 17 grams of protein, 20 superfoods. These are 340 calories per bar. So you can kind of add up your calories. I went a little lean on this last trip, and it bit me in the butt. This is a fruit leather that my wife makes. This is basically a full apple and a full sweet potato, and she rolls it up into a fruit leather on this wax paper, and it's awesome. And then inside this, I also, on this cold weather hunt, I have these millet and brown rice ramen noodles. I love these noodles. Ryan runs these noodles, but he doesn't use the broth that comes with it. He uses a better broth, which I need to get my hands on, by Lono Life. And I think if you use a code that he has, you'll get a discount on it. But it's
Stealthy 10.
Stealthy 10.
Stealthy.
Okay. So you save a little bit there if you go to Lono Life and use the Stealthy 10, Stealthy 10 code. And that bone broth, it's a bone broth, both chicken and I think beef. And that bone broth is high quality broth, which is bone stock for soups and stuff. And there's a cream of mushroom, and then there's like a chicken one and some others. And so
there's a Thai curry.
And they basically come the way like an Ignite snack stick come, just a powder, and you add that to a cup of hot soup or whatever, but you throw these rice noodles in there. And this is about 300 calories for the rice noodles, and I don't know what the bone broth has in it. Lots of fat, peptides, and then good stuff in there. And then, of course, I'd add a dinner to this. I really have been enjoying different dinners right now. My favorite, though, is the Heather's Choice smoked sockeye salmon chowder. I've been enjoying some others, too, like I know Backpacker's Pantry. Just like if I want like a hamburger or like a cheap McDonald's type meal, I've been liking the feta, Alfredo feta, whatever. But man, it makes me dump big turds. Another one that I really like, or there's the Off-Grid oatmeal. They make great oatmeal. I've been enjoying those. But I've been doing a lot of ramen and tuna, just because it's clean and easy with some Lono Life bone broth, and you're in the money. It's a great meal, and it's cheap, way cheaper. I love tuna. I love ramen.
I love tuna.
I love hot ramen, soupy, brothy, salty ramen when it's freezing but cold outside. And when you're getting that depleted, this I can eat like 3 bags of noodles in a second. This weighs nothing. And that's 900 calories. So bringing extra noodles and broth is money. You never get done with it. And as long as you have some dried meats and protein.
That's what James does. He just brings an extra one of those little
James
flats.
brings cheap ramen, which I brought cheap ramen on this last one because it's like having white Wonder Bread or donuts. And it's like 400 calories. And it ain't healthy.
No, but it hits.
But it's just like when you're depleted
great.
that much, it's like you just ran a marathon or did some endurance race. It just burns right through. So anyway, that's that. Now, my mom and dad just got a Harvest Right freeze dryer, and so they've been making me meals because my parents love me and they're awesome. And
that's Adeline's special.
This is a hamburger patty and asparagus. Right here in this little package that you can see right here. It's kind of one package, Mylar, that's sealed into 2.
Yep.
And
it comes with a heat sealer.
It's amazing. It weighs almost nothing, and it's a full patty and asparagus. And
it's
you
not
add
like
water.
A small hamburger patty.
Yeah.
It's a big hamburger
and
patty.
You add water, and you've got a great little meal. It's crazy how freeze drying is a lot different than dehydrating.
I think that's like 12 apples.
This is insane. This is the risk you run when you dehydrate or dry fruit.
How big it
is it can wreck you because you think, oh, I'm just going to eat this bag of delicious little dried apples, not knowing you just ate the equivalent of 12 apples in one sitting. It will wreck you. So you got to be careful with dried because when you dehydrate or dry something, it becomes hyperpalatable. Meaning that it's like you're only going to eat so much of a potato, but when you add salt and butter to it, you're going to eat 10 times as. When you make it into a potato chip, you can eat 25 potatoes.
How many apples can you eat in one sitting?
When you take a potato and you don't add anything to it, you're going to eat one potato. But when you turn it into potato chip, you're going to eat 25 potatoes. It's just when you make a food hyper palatable, you got to be careful about consumption. So this is crazy, like how much. And so you can dehydrate stuff, but you lose a lot of nutrition when you dehydrate. When you freeze dry, which is what the new home freeze dryer at Harvest Right does, I'm going to mess around with it. The cool thing about freeze dryers, it maintains a lot of sweetness and the flavor. I think a little better than when it's cooked out of it with a dehydrator. And this will stay nutritious for 15 or 20 years or something, where dehydrated food usually can last like a year. And then it starts to really lose a lot of its nutritional value. So I do like this from a food storage perspective as well, because I can just grab meals, any leftovers whatsoever at the house, anything that we're making, and it's like, oh, that was good. That was a great casserole. That was a great this or that. And you just freeze dry it into a meal, your normal serving, and take it hunting.
We have a cousin who basically every night makes a double batch of dinner.
Yeah.
And then freeze dries one half of it every time.
They hoard and prep for the future and
awesome.
For the apocalypse. So anyway, we're going to dive more into the dehydration options that are out there. I got my sister diving into ice cream sandwiches for me because those are
She
important.
bought the ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah. So this could get me into trouble. But I'm excited about it. The home dryer is around $2,000 or to $4,000, depending on how big a unit you get. And
they do sell commercial grade ones as well. I mean, like if you're super duper rich.
Yeah. And that's for batch processing. Like, but for what we're doing, this is perfect. And I think you're into it. You could get a nice setup for $2,500.
Yeah,
I think
there's some discounts. They're like 30% off right now.
I think you can justify it if you spend as much time in the backcountry as I do, but also you can justify it if you really want to
food storage.
Do food storage. Yeah. Because we can a ton of stuff, but jars and cans, those aren't very packable. And they have their pros and cons, but when you dehydrate something, it just disappears. The volume just goes to nothing. And so you can store like what you have in a jar, like in 20 jars can be in one bag.
Yep.
And that's a lot of nutrition and food in one small space.
My mom and dad did 12 jars of peaches, and they're the tall, like quarter pints. All of those went into 2 of those Mylark bags, the same amount of peaches.
I ate the whole bag of peaches
How'd that feel?
One day. Me and Ryan
They're
both.
freaking good.
You can't stop. And those little peaches, first of all,
they're candy.
They're candy because they're grown right here next door.
They're fresh peaches.
They're fresh, but once you freeze dried them, they'll stay that way forever. The sweetness was there, the flavor, the taste, it was nice.
And they just crunch so
good.
Yeah.
They're different than a dehydrated peach, which is chewy, like these apples are dehydrated. But a freeze dried is crunchy.
Do you have those freeze dried mangoes yet?
No. They're lighter and they just last longer. And then if you want to, you can add water to them. And they take on water and they go like kind of back to normal-ish. It's really weird where you can't do that with something dehydrated. Dehydration slightly cooks things. So that's why you can't dehydrate an ice cream sandwich, but you can freeze dry it. And that's cool. Freeze dry everything. I want to freeze dry a bunch of the kale and turn it into powder. Lampers took his liver because he doesn't like to eat liver, but he knows it's good for him. And he dehydrated all the liver and ground it into a powder and then put it in capsules.
Yeah, Daisy and I are going to do that. We have some friends who own a buffalo farm, and they just butchered 5 buffalo, and they said we could have all the livers, and they're bringing them down. So
I think if you freeze dry the liver, it's way better. In fact, Lona Life bone broth, that's freeze dried as well. And when you freeze dry, that lasts forever, but I think it breaks down into a powder better and it rehydrates better. So I really want to try some of my own bone broth that I make all the time.
Freeze dry.
And I want to freeze dry it and take it with me. And I have bones from moose and elk and deer and stuff that I'm always breaking down and using when I can to make my own concoctions. And we usually put it into the freezer. We put it in ice cube trays, freeze it, and then we throw it inside some of these vacuum seal bags, and then we vacuum seal the cubes. So then when you pull them out, there's just piles of broth and frozen cubes in the freezer, which is nice. And you could can it, but man, if I could take that and store it in pouches like they do for Lono Life by freeze drying it, I think that'd be ideal. That's ideal. Then I can backpack with it, take it everywhere with me whenever I want. It's kind of like a bouillon cube, and you just add it to your thing. It's ready to go. Anyway, folks, we're going to wrap this podcast up. I think that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the show. You want me to show that horn? So
Real quickly.
This found this on one of the last hunts I was on. Found this shed. You can see the mass on it. I will let you know that we found some great bucks. What I'm looking for when I'm out there is, you can tell this doesn't score a ton, but it's all bladed. It's got all this mass in size, mass here. You can tell it's old.
Junk on the back.
This is what gets me excited. He's got little stickers off the side that are kind of broke down because this is just an old shed. But these sheds, this is what gets me turned on and excited.
Yeah.
And it's funny because this, you can tell, this is not a high-scoring shed, right?
No.
But you can just tell this buck was old. That
buck was badass.
Old. And that's what I want. Old. I want age. I want something that just has been around forever, and he's not going to make it for the next season. And his horns are all just gross and declining like this, and he's old crusty. That's what I'm looking for.
It's a gem you're not going to get the next year. Like, it's a window of time in this
What's crazy is we always find bucks that are great, but when they don't have mass, if they're thin horned, they're not that old. They might be in their prime, or that maybe they're just genetic that way. But a thin-horned deer or elk, I have a hard time getting excited about. I'm a sucker for mass. My Montana elk is just chunk, just mass. It's just mass from top to bottom. And it doesn't score.
Doesn't score as well as the Idaho.
But it weighs twice as much.
Easily.
It's got more bone. Period. And so this horn is kind of an example of that, I think. Like, you can tell it's thick and heavy. It's got mass. It's got, if you were to do water displacement on a horn with lots of mass, it'll show up to be more mass, more horn
overall
than a lot of these horns that score 30 or 40 points higher, inches higher, but are thin horned.
I think it's time to get rid of that Boone and Crockett nonsense and redo this.
Yeah, the system doesn't account for mass. It doesn't give enough value to mass. And so
I'll tell you what, Brian, the Chinese will pay for more for that one than they will the other one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, anyway, I hope that was useful. Maybe we'll go over weapons and guns and other stuff later, but that's my thing right now. Check out the new Gators, the new Peaks Gators, the Stormfront or Stormcastle Gator here. I'll talk about a little more. I was going to try to get Ryan to get on the podcast with me and kind of go over some of the testing and the design pieces that he really wanted to see on there. But check that out. If you're getting a pair, use the code GRITTY. That helps us out. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.